Now, now we are getting into it, man. Now we're gonna get into some games that not only we all know by heart, but also ones that we know are gonna continue on for days to come. Welcome back to Gaming Memory Lane, and this week's destination is Donkey Kong, the original Donkey Kong. Okay, the one on the arcade that was ported to Atari and Coleco and Nintendo, the NES, of course. And just what this game has done for video game and just all of gaming in general, not just for like video games, but just gaming in general. Uh, let's get into it, man. 1981, developed and published by Nintendo. Of course, we all know that it's Nintendo. This is Donkey Kong. Okay? This is one of their babies right here. All right. Now, Donkey Kong was created to salvage unsold cabinets following the failure of Radar Scope. Now, Radar Scope was a arcade game that was also developed and published by Nintendo. And what they did was, since it was an unsuccessful game, it didn't match to the standards of all the other games that were in the arcades at the time. They took the arcade cabinet, the hardware, everything, and kind of just got rid of like all the Radar Scope stuff and just replaced it with Donkey Kong. So they already had like, the blueprint. They just needed a different IP. So the IP was Donkey Kong. Ah, now, this was a project that Nintendo assigned. This project was specially assigned to a first-time game designer. Does anybody know that name? Shigeru Miyamoto. That name, from this point on, became a household name amongst gamers. If you own a Nintendo or played any Nintendo games, especially their heavy hitters, you know the name Shigeru Miyamoto. This game, supposedly, I was doing my research, and this was interesting, but also it made sense that this game had inspiration, and it was inspired by Beauty and the Beast. Okay, hey, Pauline, the princess that was kidnapped by Donkey Kong. Okay, well, there's your Beauty, and obviously Donkey's the Beast. It was also inspired by King Kong, which I wonder that's where they got the name Donkey Kong from, and Popeye. Supposedly Popeye, but that's where I guess Mario comes in, because this was Mario's first appearance in a video game that was licensed by Nintendo. But of course, back then his name wasn't Mario. Especially in this game, his name was Jumpman. Okay, who remembers that? Who remembers Mario's name was Jumpman in the beginning? Now this game was known at the time to be one of the most complex games to be released at this point. Not just complexity on like how tough it is or how tricky it is, but complex on like just like the graphics for each character and each characteristic, the cutscenes, multiple unique stages, and just the bright colors. Like this game earned its rightfully so, in just in the video gaming industry. We know Donkey Kong to this day. Me personally, I didn't. This was not my first Donkey Kong. Okay, my first Donkey Kong was Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo, which that alone was a huge enough game because that kind of revamped the Donkey Kong franchise. A little bit of a side quest here. The Donkey Kong in this game is Cranky Kong in Donkey Kong Country. Some of you may have known that. Some of you didn't. But there you go. Now, this was the highest grossing game in Japan back in 1981 when it came out. And then here in the US, 1982, it was the highest grossing game. Along with and I think just in general, it was the highest grossing game, not just with the arcade, but also like the various ports it came out. Like I mentioned earlier, it came out on the NES, of course. That's probably where a lot of you started playing this game. Then the arcade, like I said, that's probably the rest of you got your start. But it was also on the Atari, and it was also on the ColecoVision, I believe it was. The various ports have sold more than 15 million units worldwide. And for the units in the US, I'm assuming this was because when I did the research, I couldn't find specificities if it was the ports or if it was the arcade. But it says here in the US, it sold about 60,000 units, equaling up to $180 million. In the research, I couldn't see if there was. It just told me a bunch of different, like, oh, this is how much money Japan made in US and so on and so forth. But I couldn't find a specific if it was the arcade cabinet or just in general with the various ports. There was a lawsuit that Nintendo had to face from this game. Universal City Studios sued Nintendo for quote unquote ripping off the King Kong movies. Let me say that. Universal City Studios unsuccessfully sued Nintendo, meaning Universal took Nintendo to court because they were sued. Nintendo won. Nintendo won the lawsuit. All right. And there's a lot more facts about this game, but I don't want to bore you too much with it. I just want we know it's fucking Donkey Kong, man. This is a game that we, regardless if whichever version of Donkey Kong you're thinking of, when you think Donkey Kong, you can close your eyes and picture a Donkey Kong, whether it's this one, Donkey Kong Jr., or the Donkey Kong that a lot of us know today, basically from Donkey Kong Country, But I have played the original. I played it on the NES, and I played it on. And I think it was just NES. It was like an emulation, but it wasn't like an actual physical cartridge. And then of course you got the NES Classic Mini that I played. You know, I have yet to play this on the actual arcade cabinet with the with the joystick. But let me tell you, man, this game. Oh, you know what? I did play it on the Game Boy. For those of you that remember, there was a Donkey Kong game on the Game Boy. It was Donkey Kong 94, what it was originally called. But it just says Donkey Kong on the cover. And that's back when Mario was Mario. It was on the Game Boy. I grew up playing that game. I love that game. It's on NES Online. The NES version, of course. And then, of course, the Game Boy version is on Game Boy Online. If you have a Switch, for those of you who have a Switch, it's on Switch Online. And it has the first four classic stages, and then it goes into the puzzle game that we know today as Mario vs. Donkey Kong, that came out on systems after the Game Boy. But that was this game, this original Donkey Kong game, man. It's got its love, it's got its flowers, it's got its fame for a reason. I mean, hell, even Adam Sandler included in his movie Pixels as the quote final boss. And there was something like this was probably the game he wasn't good at, and it was along the lines of like because there's no strategy, there's no nothing, and technically that's true. There is a bit of a strategy. It's just not as easy to figure out as like Pac-Man. Once you figure out what the ghosts are doing in Pac-Man, or once you figure out the formation of the alien ships and space invaders, like how to get around that game and beat the levels. Donkey Kong is somewhat randomly generated because when he starts rolling those barrels, well, first of all, the very first barrel he throws is that one that goes into that oil bin or whatever it is, and then you get that flame that follows you. And it follows you. I think there's a total of two that follow you, and then you have to dodge barrels at the same time. And the thing is, you have to climb up these ladders. Well, the flames are behind you. They can also climb up ladders. You got these barrels in front of you that can climb down ladders, and half the ladders on stage are broken, so you can't climb up them. The barrels can go down them, the flames can go up them. You cannot. So if you climb up that broken ladder to try to avoid something, no, you're getting hit. However, now this is the first stage, in case you guys didn't know. That there are hammers. There's 2 hammers you can get. And the hammers, what they do is they get rid of your enemies. All right, but for limited time. If you're quick and precise enough with it, you could probably take out both flames. It will depend on where you are with it. Let's say you take out both flames and maybe 2 to 3 barrels. That buys you time. One thing you can do is you can take the hammer while you have it, throw it up in the air, climb the ladder, and grab it again while it's still in the air, and continue on the next platform. And then once you reach the top, you go all the way over, climb up that tiny platform right there where Pauline the princess is at, and then you beat the stage. Donkey takes the princess, climbs up the ladder to the next stage, and you go on to the next stage. Now this next stage, stage 2 is the one that pisses me off the most. Okay? Because I believe that's stage 2 that has the springs. Okay, you know what I'm talking about? The one where he throws the springs and just bounce and bounce. What makes that stupid is that the platforming in that level, you have to be as precise and accurate as possible, or you're going to die a lot and game over and go back to stage 1. What I mean by that is you start in the bottom left-hand corner. You're on this little quarter-sized platform. There's a ladder that goes up to another quarter-sized platform. And there's items. Level 2 introduces the items that are the princess's items. I believe it's a purse, an umbrella, and a hat. I believe those are the 3 items. And you get bonus points and stuff like that. In the Game Boy version, you get a bonus level and bonus points if you collect all 3 things. But in the arcade and NES version, you just get bonus points. So on that platform that you start up on, there are it's a lift or an elevator or something that has a little half-inch fucking platform you have to jump on. Here's the problem. You can't jump too early. This is the part that makes me mad. If you jump too early and it's too far of a jump, especially if you're on that top platform, you are going to fall and you are going to die in midair. You don't even have to wait for Mario to hit the ground when he dies. He'll just sit there and die. For those of you who play this game and know how Mario dies, he'll do like cartwheels and then he'll lay flat on his back and there's like a little halo above him, I think. With his feet sticking up in the air. He'll fucking do that in midair. Okay? He'll jump off the platform or even fall off the platform. He'll do cartwheels and just lay on his back. In the midair. He's not laying on nothing. He's just there. In the fucking air. That's the shit that makes me so mad. Because it's a platformer. Okay? Platformers have to have fall damage. I can understand him falling all the way down to the ground and then dying, but not dying in the middle of the air where there's nothing. Okay? It's the most annoying shit. I can understand the frustration for those of you who played this on the arcade cabinet and you just accidentally nudge that joystick just a little bit and then he just falls right off that fucking platform and he dies right there in midair. Right back to the beginning you go. Or even if it's your last life, right back to the very beginning you go. Put in another quarter. If you have one. But then another thing about those platforms is if you jump too late and that platform itself is too high and it's going up, you can't jump when it's going up too high because, again, he'll die in midair. It's too big of a jump for his little ass. But if you stay on it too long, you'll get squished between that platform and the platform above you. The part where Donkey Kong's standing on, and you get squished and you'll die there. So you finally made it to the next platform that's on the other side of the elevator. It's another 2 set of platforms. It's a platform, then there's 2 ladders and another platform, and then there's a flame. And this flame is consistently going in circles. If you jump on that top platform, or the bottom one, it doesn't matter. If you jump on the platform that the flame is on, You need to be quick and climb up that ladder. Otherwise, you're going to get burnt up and you're going to die. Here's the problem with this version of Donkey Kong and this version of Mario. There is no run. You don't run, okay? You just walk and jump. That is it. There is no running, and I can't remember. I don't think there's any hammers in the second level either. You just have to platform your way through. So you're on that second platform. You don't get burnt up. You're safe. Then what's next? Two fucking problems. Another elevator that's moving in the opposite direction that you are. So that means that the first one was going up. The second one's going down. On the other side of the elevator, there are 3 platforms. There's a platform, a ladder, another platform, a longer ladder, and then the top platform. The second elevator is going down. If you jump too late, I think you can't. I don't know I can't remember if you get squished with the elevator or if you die instantly if you go down. I don't remember. But if let's say there is a platform that these elevators on, you can stand on it, but you can't make that jump to the next platform. Because that platform with the elevators on, it's like a little square. At least with that platform that the elevator itself is, it's a bar. You can get a little bit of a walking start because you don't run. A walking start to jump to make that jump. But if you jump too early, you won't miss the platform. You go right through it, and then you'll fall and die midair. Just like you fucking did before on the first platform, in the first elevator. This is problem number 2 with the second elevator. That elevator, that's where the springs are. Because in that very top platform, where there's Donkey Kong and the princess, and he's throwing those springs, there's a gap where the springs go down. Okay? And it makes that noise, that wah 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 wah. It goes down. And there's a gap, the main platform that Donkey Kong's on, and then there's a platform on the far right that you have to get to. Not only you have to be precise with your jumps to not die in midair, to make it on that elevator, you have to be precise enough to be on that elevator and not get fucking smacked by that spring. You get touched by that spring, you're going to die. And then still make the jump from that elevator to the other platform that's on the far right where there's another flame. So you finally made it to the far right. You finally made it to the far right. Now you gotta climb up there. And now you're at the very top. You climb to the very top platform. Because I remember I believe there's 3 platforms on the far right. You made it to the very top. Now, 2 problems. Technically 3, but definitely 2. You have to jump over that gap. If you jump too early, you're going to fall through that gap and you're going to die midair. You jump too late, you're going to end up hitting a spring and you'll die. You have to jump because what Donkey Kong does, he'll throw a spring, then he'll do his little stomp that he does and throw another spring. While he's doing that stomp, jump. And then run. This is where you have to learn the strategy of the springs to see because they'll bounce twice before they hit that gap to go down. So you have to run and then stop, and then when that spring bounces, hopefully it bounces over you. And then run, save the princess. Then you did it. Stage 3. Which, stage 3 doesn't make me as mad. It's annoying. But it's not as bad as the first. Because I think it's pretty cool. It is a little tougher. But I don't mind it because I think it's cool. Stage 3, so it's kind of sort of a similar layout. But instead of elevators, it's ropes. Okay? You got these vertical ropes going up and down. And you have these things that are going up and down the ropes. I don't know. I can't remember if in the original Donkey Kong they had. I think it was. But it's these in the Game Boy version at least. I know this. It looked like they're not crocodiles, they're not alligators or something, but they look like that, and they go up and down the ropes. I can't remember in the original Donkey Kong, but I do know in the Game Boy version that there was like these bricks or something that were in between the ropes, and if you hit it, it'll fall down. It could kill the alligator or crocodile, whatever it was, and that was going up and down these ropes. And basically, what you gotta do is you just gotta jump to one rope from the other to get from obviously the left to the right, and you can go up and down. The thing is, you can grab more than one rope at the same time. So Mario can have, he can be facing you, his right hand and right leg are on one rope, his left hand and left leg on the other rope, and you can slide up and down like that much faster than you could if your, whole body's on one rope. But once you get past that, you got to get to the platform on the far right where there's items. And I don't know in the original Donkey Kong, but I do believe in the Game Boy version there was a 1-up, an extra life. But again, get these platforms on the far right, then there's a gap, and then the main platform that Donkey's on, and then there's two longer ropes you go up. You have to go up them ropes, go over there, and save the princess. I don't remember if there are springs in the third level. I want to say there is. Because if there is, then you have to dodge the springs while you're going up and down those ropes. I think there's springs as well, just like the ones in the second level. And then you have the fourth stage where you somewhat battle Donkey. What you do is, it's 3, I think. 3 levels. Because you got the main platform. Then you have, well, you start at the very bottom, and then there's a platform, and then another platform, then another platform. I just can't remember if there's 3 or 4. But what you do is you climb up to the first platform, and each platform has these squares in them that are, different color. What you do is you just walk over them, and those squares will disappear. You got to keep doing that for each level while battling flames. But there's hammers in this level, so you can get rid of the flames. They'll keep coming, but you can get rid of them to kind of help you out a little bit. Essentially, what you're doing is you're just taking apart the stage because Donkey Kong's staying in the middle, and you're disconnecting the main platforms from its connections, which is these little, squares that are different colors that you're walking over and collecting. Once you collect all of them, the stage will collapse. Donkey Kong will fall down on his head, and then you save the princess. I don't know if that's it in the Game Boy, in the NES version, because I never got that far in the NES version, but I do know in the Game Boy version, Donkey Kong is there on his head, then you're up there with Pauline, and then he gets up, does his big stomp, collapses that platform that you're on, you fall down, and the princess, he catches the princess and run off. You run off, chase after him, and then into the puzzle-like stages, in which, again, today we know as Mario versus Donkey Kong. Now, that game in particular, Donkey Kong 94, I am going to give it its own episode, man. I grew up with that. I love that game. But, I'm talking about the classic Donkey Kong, and it's, yeah. These games were built to be frustrating, I mean, that and then Nintendo Tough, or the NES Tough, or NES Hard, and Nintendo Challenge, we all know Nintendo made hard games back in the 80s and 90s, man, because they wanted that replay value. They wanted a game that can bring you back. And I can assure you there was a line at the arcade for the Donkey Kong cabinet. I can assure you that there was people pumping quarters into it. Like this game does have that addictive quality to it. This game is good, and it's I think it's a fair amount of toughness because like it's a tough game that's good. Like there are games that are so tough it's just not fun to play. You're just like fuck it, the hell with this game. And then there are games that are tough, but like it's a good tough. Like you're getting your ass handed to you, but you're still having fun. you know, like this game, and I'm gonna bring some NES, like fucking the Ninja Turtles on the NES. Like just games like that. This is one of them. And it just keeps you coming back. And I don't know because I couldn't find anything about this, but I don't know if this is one of the games where if you beat the game on one quarter, if you get to go back and play again on that same quarter, and it's tougher the second go around, or if you want to play again, you have to put in another quarter. That I don't remember, and that I don't know because I couldn't find anything about that. But this was one hell of a revamp of salvaging and reusing of materials from a game called Radar Scope. I never really heard of Radar Scope until I started this podcast and doing research for some games. I can't remember which episode it was, but I know I brought up Radar Scope again once before. But man, Nintendo really hit it out the park. And like I said, first time game designer, Shigeru Miyamoto. This is where he starts getting his hands, his handprints and fingerprints with Nintendo. And boy, I tell you what, that he knocked it out of the park with this game. And look what Donkey Kong is now. Now it's a household name. Now people who don't even play games know who Donkey Kong is, just as well as they know Mario and Pac-Man and you know. Donkey Kong has become such a recognizable fictional character, He has to be maybe in a top 10 of recognizable characters, like not just video games, just like in like just this animation and fiction by itself. Like like everybody knows Mario, everybody knows Mickey Mouse, everybody knows Bugs Bunny, everybody knows SpongeBob, everybody has to know Donkey Kong. Like he's been around since the 80s, and he's still thriving today. Like this, he's in the Mario movie, he's in toys and clothing and video games and everything else. Like he has his own merch. We all, I would, personally, I think it's safe to say he's got to be top 10 most recognizable characters, along with, maybe the Ninja Turtles and Sesame Street people. It's, there's only so much I can say before I go in circles. But again, there's a lot more you can't say. You can't say it's a bad game, because if it was bad, Donkey Kong wouldn't be where he is today. You can definitely say it's a good game. You can say it's a great game. You can say it was the best to ever be made. That's just your opinion. Personally, I believe that this version of Donkey Kong is appropriately rated for where it's at. Personally, I would put Donkey Kong Country above it for two reasons. One, the nostalgia. That's where I got my Donkey Kong start. And two, because that was a game that pushed Super Nintendo to its limits. Eventually, Donkey Kong Country will get its episode here on Gaming Memory Lane. There's just no way that I'm going to end this podcast forever without talking about that. But I have to start with this one first before I talk about that one. Because you just got to show respect to the OG. You just have to. There's no way in hell that when you talk about Nintendo and arcades and you do not bring up this game. This is probably one of the first games you think of, along with the Mario Brothers. But I don't believe that original Mario Brothers was licensed by Nintendo by then. Maybe it was. Maybe it was. It had to be. But I know that game is not as old as Donkey Kong because obviously, well, not unless, I don't know. I didn't see it in the research. But let's predict before I talk about that game, because that game, I will talk about the original Mario Brothers. Before it was the Super Mario Brothers, I'm going to talk about the Mario Brothers. And that episode's coming up soon, so I guess we'll find out together, in a couple weeks. But this game deservedly, it obviously deserves a spot here in Gaming Memory Lane for all the reasons I've already listed, and for more reasons to come, because this game cannot be forgotten. There's just no way. There's just no way. Donkey Kong himself won't be forgotten. But you can't forget this game. Like, for some of you older folks, this is your first Donkey Kong. For me, in the middle here, Donkey Kong Country and the Super Nintendo was my first. And for some of you youngins, your first Donkey Kong was probably on the Wii or the Wii U, like Donkey Kong Country Returns or Tropical Freeze, or whose first Donkey Kong was on the like GameCube? Like there was like not Barrel Blast, I think that was the Wii. Jungle Beat with the bongo drums as a controller. Y'all know which one I'm talking about? There was that one, and of course Donkey Kong 64, which it may have been a lot of people's first Donkey Kong as well. It wasn't mine. But I tell you what, this is a must play, especially for those who are into retro gaming and for those who want to go back and not only revisit the old school classics, but also to maybe kind of get your feet wet with the old school classics. So, like, if you're somebody who's got their gaming journey started with the PS2 or something, and have no experience with the prior games, this is definitely one of the ones you have to play, man. Because this is where it all started for Donkey Kong. This is where it started for a lot of, you know, platformers. Because this was considered one of the pioneers of platforming that kind of helped evolve what platforming we know today is. Like without this, they wouldn't have the Mario Brothers or Super Mario Brothers. Like this, the way that they were able to kind of make and maneuver the characters and the enemies and create the stages and all that stuff. Where it's getting to a point where certain platformers where like the main protagonist is you, the player, while the main antagonist is the entire stage itself. You know, but this is the OG that kind of did it. It was one of the first ones that made their first footprints in platform gaming and the platforming genre. But I think I've said enough. I don't want to go too much in circles here, but you have to play this. This is a must play. I cannot stress that enough, but I will stress it. This is a must play. And this is definitely a must play if you have patience. If you don't have patience like me, you're going to hate the second level. Maybe the third one. You might hate all of it, depending on your patience level. That second level with them springs and those fucking stupid elevators, you're going to hate it. But I still go back and play it. It's just one of those games, man. It has you in that nostalgic chokehold. Donkey Kong. What an introduction it made. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of Gaming Memory Lane. Be sure to follow my socials, Facebook and Instagram at Kevin Gill Gaming. Be sure to follow my subreddit, r/Gaming Memory Lane. Trying to build a community somewhere to where we can kind of get more involved with each other. And of course, YouTube. I think that's where the majority of the community is on YouTube. With over 100 subscribers, likes, and comments. I love that stuff. I love seeing that you guys like seeing what I'm doing. That's cool. So shout out my YouTube, Kevin Go Gaming. Currently doing the playthrough of The Simpsons Road Rage on the PS2. That was requested, and I'm having a blast with that. That game is fun. It does get a little repetitive after a while, but I'm still having fun with it. And be sure to follow and rate the podcast. Now, I don't know if I've ever said this before, but there are links in the description of the podcast to all my stuff. All right, man. Until next week, I'm out.